Welcome to the Global Citizen Life podcast. Today on the show, we have Steve Didier. Very nice to meet you, Steve.
Yeah, it's a pleasure meeting you as well.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, kind of where you were, where you started out, and where you are now?
Oh, as far as my expat journey, um, I I started being almost a full-time expat about a little over 10 years ago. It was in 2013. I had a I had a big real estate business in Las Vegas, and I got wiped out in the crash and did a few things that. And I was like, you know what? Finally, I went through a divorce and everything else. So I was like, you know what? I'm not tied down by anything anymore. So I basically put my dog and two suitcases, a box in my car, and we just drove south. I ended up in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, about an hour south of Cancun. And yeah, I've been pretty much on the road ever since then. I was in Mexico for 6 years, 5 years, no,
Okay,
six.
so
Good Lord. I can't even remember, about
I
six
know
years.
sometimes it's hard to think when we go back. It's like, how long was I there again?
Yeah, I was. And then I went back to Las Vegas. That's where I was from. I went back to Las
Hmm.
Vegas because I actually met a girl in Mexico.
Okay.
And, we hit it off. She was traveling solo. She was adventurous. I was like, oh, cool. We got along. And turns out she was from Vegas as well. So I ended up back in Vegas, but I was back. It didn't work out, obviously. So then I tried Phoenix for a little bit and I was like, yeah, no, I can't do this. I went back to Mexico. And then I decided to go further. So I'm currently in Thailand right now. So I spent time in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam. So
Excellent. And so, how long have you been in Thailand?
a total of about 3 months, with a month
Okay.
out that I spent in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. I spent a month there and then my visa expired, had to come back here.
Okay, excellent. I definitely want to visit Vietnam. It's very high on my bucket list of travels.
Amazing place. You will not regret it.
Excellent. Well, maybe I'm thinking maybe in the winter because I hate winter, and I'm currently in Montenegro, which is in the Balkans of Europe. So it's a very small
Okay.
country, but it's beautiful. The population of the entire country is only 650,000 people, so it's quite small, which has its pros and cons to being that small. But I do love it because I spend a lot of time in Barcelona as well. I've got residency there.
Okay.
But Barcelona is so busy and it's always so
Yeah.
busy. And so it's a nice, easy, direct flight escape from busyness to quietness. But then after a while, I get bored. I'm like, I need the
Yep.
busyness again. So I'm trying to have that balance of
Find
enjoying
that
the city life.
balance point.
Hmm. Exactly, exactly. So when you first left and moved to Mexico, did you go through, you were there for 6 years, so were you kind of that perpetual tourist, or did you go through the residency program, or how did you stay there for 6 years?
I did a little bit of both.
Okay.
Mexico is Mexico is kind of unique in that, you can do the 6 month tourist visa,
Hmm.
and then once you leave and come back, it just automatically renews. So I was going back to the US more than once every 6 months. So it really never was a thing. But I believe it was like 2016, I started working for sales for a company down there. And so ended up using that to get the temporary residency, which was good for a year. But I didn't keep up with that gig anyway. So I went back to the every 6 months getting out.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I did that as well initially when I first moved to Costa Rica.
Mm,
We did what we called the visa runs. And so,
yep.
there's pros and cons to living life that way. It's great that you can check out a place, and if you like it, you can kind of keep coming back. But kind of one thing that made they were starting to crack down on it a little bit within Costa Rica. But then, of course, once the pandemic hit, if you're not legally allowed to be there, like that kind of was a bit of a game changer, I think, for people to really think about more, realize if something happens and we get stuck or a pandemic or whatever, like then you have to leave. Where do you go? Because if if it's been your quote home and you don't have another home, but now you have to leave or you stay illegally and you get caught, you get deported, like it really kind of it can put you in a bit of a tough situation.
It really can, especially in those places that really lock down hard. Like I have friends that were in Thailand when the pandemic hit, and there was nobody going in, nobody going out. It was locked down completely. And what they ended up doing, there was a group of them, I think they were from Canada. You could do a charter plane. There were no commercial flights. So a big group of them got together and they all paid what they had to pay to cover like a private charter flight out. But that other than that, they couldn't leave.
Right. Yeah, so it did become a bit of a gray area. I think because if you can't leave, but you're not legally there, it puts people into a bit of an awkward situation. So as I was saying, like
Yeah.
I've done the perpetual tourist thing, and um, when I first also moved to Barcelona, I did it because I was traveling a lot, so I was allowed 90 out of every 180 days. Um, and at first it was okay because I'd be in for a couple of weeks, out, in for a month, out for a month. But then after a
Right.
while, it gets exhausting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. With Mexico, I didn't think it was that, for me, it wasn't that big a deal
right.
making those visa runs because I was going back to the US at least twice a year anyway to visit family or what have you. So I would just
Mhm.
coordinate it right about 180 days and it wasn't that big a deal. But Mexico to the US is one thing, you
It's
know.
close, it's convenient, and 180 days, like every 6 months, it's
Yeah.
easy. It's
Yeah.
really it's easy to just, drive the few hours, hop on a quick flight. It definitely is a lot easier than other places that have a shorter amount of time. But it's a great
Right.
way as well for people to, if they're unsure about maybe moving full time, or as we say in Canada, we have what we call the snowbirds, the ones who love to leave
Hmm.
for the winter, go down, spend 6 months there, go back if they want until they're ready to completely move, or maybe never even completely move.
Right. Yeah, we get a lot of snowbirds in the US too. Because originally I grew up in Minnesota. So basically
Okay.
it's like South Canada, it's
Yeah.
cold. But there would
Yeah.
be a bunch of people that would go winter in Arizona or Texas or Nevada.
Hmm.
So yeah, same
Hmm.
thing. Now, what I'm doing here in Thailand is they've got what they call an educational visa,
Okay.
which you can get. It can be anywhere from 1 to 5 years. And I'm not saying they're lenient on it, but there's a lot of different things that can encompass. You could be taking language school,
Okay.
or in my case, I used to fight Muay Thai, which is kind of like
Oh,
kickboxing,
yep.
but it's like
Yep.
the Thai national sport. So you can get an
Hmm.
educational visa to train Muay Thai. So as long as I go to a gym twice a week, I get a visa with unlimited entry and exit, and it's costs a little bit of
Interesting.
money, but it's not that much. It's really not that bad.
Well, any type of visa process, residency, I mean, there's a cost to it. Um, Time, finance. So there's always going to be that. But at least then it's that security of knowing you're legally allowed to be there. You come and go as much as you want. And if again something crazy in the world happens, you're okay because you have that visa to stay.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. That I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, why did you choose Thailand, or kind of, and how long do you plan on staying there?
That's a really good question as well. I don't know.
Okay.
I right now I'm checking out a lot of the different countries in the area. I'm going to go to Bali. I'm going to go to the Philippines. I'm going to go to Cambodia and kind of figure out what I like. However, I may end up going back to Mexico for a little bit and then coming back here. But I really, really like Thailand. I really do. It's like I've been training Muay Thai since 1997, so it's been a long time, and so I've got
Mhm.
some familiarity with Thai culture and things like that. But one of the things that I've noticed here more than any other country I've been to, is everybody is so nice. I mean, they call it the land of smiles, and it's for a reason. So it's just, I appreciate the weather. I love the tropical stuff. The water's beautiful. Everything is gorgeous. People are nice. It's just, and cost of living in Southeast Asia is amazingly low for
That was
people
just
who
going to be
are.
my next question.
When you
How is
go,
that? And let's just do like kind of a little bit comparison, maybe three ways if we can. When was the last time you were in Mexico?
earlier this year,
Okay.
earlier in
So
2023. Yeah.
so maybe if we can do a bit of a comparison of Las Vegas, because you're home and and you go back, so you see people there and you know what the prices are. I was just in Denver and I couldn't believe, and I was in Canada too. I'm like, oh my God. But
Yeah.
so let's kind of price compare from Vegas to where you were in Mexico to where you are now in Thailand for the cost of living of things.
Okay. Vegas is very expensive. I don't think maybe it's quite on the level of like a Seattle, New York, or LA, but it is very, very expensive. Any sort of entertainment and rent has gone through the roof. Housing, everything is super expensive. Um, I'll give you kind of an example that will cover all
Okay,
of those.
sure.
When you go to Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon in Vietnam,
Mhm.
the most prominent building is called Landmark 81. It's the tallest building in Vietnam. It's, I think, the 14th tallest building in the world. So it's you can see it. And I was staying right downtown, and I had a friend of mine there, and we went to have dinner there. We were going to go to a night market, but it was raining, so I was like, "Hey, I want to check out the views anyway." So I booked a dinner up there. Now this was on the 77th floor,
Okay.
and all the tables, steakhouse, all the tables surrounding the outside, so everybody has an amazing view of the entire city. High-end restaurant, probably one of the more expensive restaurants in Vietnam. So we had each had appetizers, salad, main course, dessert, and a couple drinks. And the entire tab with tip and everything was like $62.30.
Crazy.
Yeah. Now, if I had gone to this type of restaurant in Las Vegas, that would have been $500
Right.
easily. Easily.
Mhm.
Now, if you go to a restaurant like that in Playa del Carmen, where I was, probably going to be about half that. So, it's like that sliding scale. I'd say Playa del Carmen in Mexico is expensive for Mexico, second only to Cabo.
Okay.
So you can, it's kind of a neat mix because you can still get really cheap street food that is
Mhm.
delicious, but you can find yourself at a Harry's steakhouse or some high-end restaurant where you can spend, two, $300 on a meal. So
Right.
it's kind of in that middle ground. But here, like, it is crazy, crazy cheap.
So would you say in kind of average, like average eating, is it cheaper to go out to eat or cook at home? Because I've heard some people say in some places that sometimes it is cheaper to eat out than it is at home. By the time you buy the groceries and you cook it, it's almost the same price as eating out, and you don't have to do the cooking and the cleaning and everything else.
Yeah,
And
eating
not
out.
counting for that, that great restaurant and everything, but just your average kind of lunch or average dinner.
Average lunch or average dinner here in Thailand, and then I'm on an island called Koh Samui, so it's a little touristy and a little bit more expensive than say like the northern part of Thailand, like Chiang Mai or Chiang Rai. But I eat out 3-4 times a day. I don't really cook here. I'll have oatmeal and protein powder in the morning, but that's other than that, I eat out or I order like delivery. And it's like I just had a really good Thai dish, home cooked big meal with a Thai iced tea, literally before I came on the podcast, and it was like $4.50 at a restaurant. So
Cheap. I mean, can you
Yeah.
even get coffee in North America for that?
No,
I think
no,
Starbucks
absolutely
is
not.
at least that.
Yes. If you go to a Starbucks in, I don't know, I know Vegas, yeah, you're looking at $6 for a venti, whatever. And I got a whole
That's right.
meal with the drink and everything else. So
It's
it's
very similar. I was just at a conference in Denver, Colorado, and a glass of wine at the hotel. Well, I got two glasses of wine with tip, I think was 42 US dollars. And I couldn't believe it for two glasses of wine because so just say like $20 for a glass each. If I was in Spain, I could have, if it was lunchtime, I could have the what they call the menu of the day. So an appetizer, entree, a glass of wine. I could probably, and it comes with coffee or dessert, but I could probably have dessert and order coffee and pay a little extra on top of that for equal to or less than that $20. So I just thought like that's a whole meal in Spain and it's one glass of wine in
yeah,
Denver.
yeah, it's crazy. And that's one thing I love about Europe. Like when I was in France and I was in Spain earlier this year as well, wine is so cheap and good wine.
Yeah, it is.
Good wine. It's
It
amazing because
is.
I do like wine. And I remember getting bottles of good stuff in France for like $10 US. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
this is a problem.
Well, and sometimes it's it can be a bottle of wine. Like if you go out, a glass of wine or a bottle of water, the wine can sometimes be equal or cheaper in some places. Like,
That's a beautiful thing. You know, when I
it's
went back to the US in 2018, I went back to Vegas, some friends of mine visited, and we decided to go out. We went to a club called Omni at Caesar's Palace. I'm not a big nightclub guy anymore. I'm way past that stage in my life, but they wanted to go out. So we went there and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to the bar. I'll get us drinks. So it was him, his wife, and me. So it was three drinks.
Mhm.
And I order them, and the guy's like, "Do you want small glasses or big glass?" I'm like, "Well, give me the bigger glass." Cool. So three drinks, it's like $150. I'm like, "Excuse me?" I'd been in
Ordered three
Mexico for
drinks.
5 years. I wasn't ready for that. It was $150 for three drinks. Now they were decent sized glasses,
St-
but $150.
Oh my gosh.
I was not prepared for that.
I would not be prepared for that either. I'd be like, what did you put in these drinks? Like,
I know. I was used to paying $3 a beer in Mexico, and I was like,
yeah,
can't tell me to put it
it's
back in the bottle, so I paid it, and I was like, oh no, 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 no.
yeah, it's like, well, let's, drink these slow because they're gonna last all night.
Yep. And next round's not on me. That's on you.
That's right. I mean, it's crazy. I just like sometimes I think, how do people afford to live in North America? Like with prices like that, I just wonder, like, of course, there's a lot of people that make a lot of money, and there's a lot of people that don't make a lot of money. Um, but you can't even go out, or you go out like what once a month kind of thing. Just because I think I guess it is what it is, and I've had people say, well, it's just what the prices are. We're just used to it. And I just think it's crazy, I guess, because I have the comparison of Europe and even what's considered expensive in Europe is still not as expensive as it is in just like a casual chain restaurant in North America.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you take two people and you have lunch at like TGI Fridays or Applebee's or something, you're looking at $50 minimum for two
Hmm.
people. There's just no
Right.
getting around it.
And
And like,
$50 in Spain or Mexico or Vietnam goes like you get way better than TGIF.
oh yeah. And just for, another comparison's sake, like I was talking to that friend of mine, she's a native of Vietnam. She grew up in Ho Chi Minh City. And yeah, there's a lot of really poorer people in Vietnam. There's a big gap between the haves and the have-nots, but your kind of lower end average family can buy groceries for the family for $100 a week.
You're not
That's
doing that in North
crazy.
America.
No, no,
Not,
no.
not
Yeah,
even
it's really
close.
difficult, especially when you're used to it and used to prices like these. Because I know I'm going to be going back to probably the US for maybe Christmas and things like that to visit family, and it's going to be a shock.
Budget, fair the budget for that because it's going to be a lot. I generally go back to Canada once a year. And I've been doing that. I left in 2011. And at first I was going back. So when I first moved to Costa Rica, I went back probably three, four, 5 times the first year, then bit less the second. And I'm now down to once a year, and I'm to the point of, do I really need to go back once a year? I mean, people can come visit me. All my friends, their kids are all older now. Um, they're almost all adults and stuff. So part of me is thinking, now I get it, it's far, but I've been doing it every year for 12 years now, 13 years almost. And part of me thinks I don't need to keep going back every single year.
No, no. I mean, honestly, my parents are getting on in years and they're having some health problems and stuff like that. But that's probably realistically speaking, that's probably the only thing that keeps me going back regularly. My
Mm.
brothers and sisters, I love seeing them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking any smack here,
Right.
but it's one of those things where I don't have you don't have that sense of urgency like when your parents start to get older,
Mm.
you know.
Right. Mhm.
And maybe that's the wrong attitude. You spend all the time with the people you love now, but like you said, people can come visit me too. I've been going back every single year. I left when I was 17. So I've been going
Wow.
back once or twice a year for 30 some years.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's interesting. And too, I mean, when I lived in Costa Rica, I did have people come visit. And I had some come visit, and they enjoyed that, and that was nice. But in recent years, not so much. And obviously, the pandemic was a chunk of those years because of everything closing down different times and what was that. But even during the pandemic, I was still able to get back to Canada every year. My
yeah.
timing kind of worked out where the one country opened, and because I had residency and obviously being a Canadian citizen, it worked out. A few times though my flights were delayed, and my 3 week stay ended up being 6 weeks, but wasn't the worst thing. I still got there, still visited, still then got back home. So it did work out. But yeah, it's a little bit tough of that balancing act of course we want to see family and friends, but also they can come visit us as well, and it's a vacation for them, and we can show them all the cool neat things in the country. And so it's almost better because they're not trying to figure it all out for themselves. We've been in places for however many years. We know the places to go, the ones that are worth seeing, the good places, the places to avoid. And it's kind of
Yep.
nice, I think, to have our friends and family come to us and experience those things as well.
It really is. I like my youngest brother came down and visited me when I was in Playa, and that was a blast. I didn't
Mm.
really expect it, because I don't think he might be the only sibling I have with a passport, but he got it just to
Oh,
come see me. So
okay.
I was surprised, but yeah, it was really fun because I'd been there for several years. I knew the lay of the land. I could bring him to all the cool spots. We had an absolute blast. It was so much fun when he came down.
I find too, when I go back to visit and with talking with other people as well, that when we do see our family and our friends, that connection is better. We have more quality time together. Because when you're living somewhere, you think, oh yeah, we'll meet up next week, or oh yeah, next week, oh next week. And when we think about how much time that we actually spend with our family and friends. And I know that there's some people that see their friends every week and see their parents every day. And of course, there's some people like that, which is fine. But if we think of our average friends, and everybody looked at how much time they actually spend with their friends and family throughout the year, and then if they're gone and you're visiting I usually go for 4 to 6 weeks is kind of my average time when I fly all the way back to Canada because it's far.
Yeah.
And so I think I actually spend more quality time and perhaps even more hours with them in that time than if it's spread throughout the year.
I would agree with that because you're focused on just that. You're not taking the time for granted. And when I left Mexico earlier this year, when did I leave Mexico? March, something like that. And I knew I was going to be going to Asia. So I knew, that quick trip wasn't going to happen anymore. So I wanted to make sure I got spend some time with my family, especially mom and dad. So I went back home for, was it just over 2 months?
Okay. Mhm.
But it was absolutely amazing time because a lot of the times that I go home, especially when I was living in Mexico, I'd fly in and it might be 4 or 5 days for Christmas or Thanksgiving or somebody's birthday or wedding or whatever it is. And everything is so hustle and bustle, and you see a lot of
Mm.
people, but you don't spend any quality time with them. And that's one thing that I really enjoyed. Like that 2.5 months, whatever it was really special to me because I got to actually, spend time. My brother and I took the Harleys out and rode around. My dad and I re-roofed a shed. We had that bonding time, and I actually got to spend some quality time, which is honestly is priceless. I hadn't done that in years.
Right. No, I think it's great. Every time I go back to, I always make sure that I get one-on-one time with everyone. And of course, there's group things as well, but I always make it a point to make sure I have that one-on-one time with everyone, just because then it is that better quality time.
Yeah. Actually, that experience kind of changed the way that I plan on visiting home now. When I go home, I'm gonna make sure I go for at least like a month. That way I can, get that quality time. And my brothers and sisters, I grew up in Minnesota, like I said. My brothers and sisters all live in Minnesota, but they're kind of spread out within the state.
Mm.
So I got one brother that's, a couple hours, 3 hours or whatever north of my mom and dad. I got one sister who's 4 hours south, so they're all over the place. But this way I could, I went down, southern Minnesota and stayed with them for a weekend and rode horses and we did all that stuff. And then I got to go and visit everybody, which was really, really cool because I
Yeah.
wasn't rushed for time.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings me actually to an interesting thought for maybe some people, and I'm going to ask you. So, because even though they're all in Minnesota, so they're all in the U.S., all even within the state, how often are they getting together and seeing each other, being even 3 to 4 hours away? Because I know some people that are, oh, well, you live so far and you're moving, or oh, I'm worried that I won't see my grandkids or my children or my friends because we're far away, and obviously we are very far away right now. But I'm curious to how often, if you're aware that they actually see each other, and they're, we would say, considering how far we are, only 3 to 4 hours away from each other.
That's a really good question because when we were talking about this earlier, I was thinking like, wow, yeah, we went back every 6 months when I was in Mexico or so, give or take. But with the brothers and sisters that are the furthest away, they a lot of times they'd come see me, and that'd be the first time my parents saw them since the last time I was home. Now
Right.
I've got one brother that lives, he and his wife, they live, it's probably about a 15-minute drive for them to go to my mom and dad's. So they make it a practice of going to probably, if not once a week, then once every 2 weeks and having dinner on Sunday or something like
Mhm.
that. But everybody's got their own lives. Everybody's busy. They got families. They've got jobs. They've got this. They've got that. And ultimately, I probably stay in as close a contact as everybody else through social media and Messenger and leaving WhatsApp audios and all those different types of ways that you can communicate these days.
Mhm. Yeah, it was just when you mentioned it, I just thought, oh, that's a great thing to bring up, because a lot of people who are considering moving full-time, part-time, that's a concern that they're so far away they won't see their family. But even if they are, a few hours away, to think about, well, how often are they really spending that time seeing family and closest friends.
Yeah, I think
So sometimes when
people
we're gone
actually,
further, we actually spend more time when we come back. Like I'll go back, as I said, I spend at least a month to 6 weeks on average, and I'm making sure that I'm spending the night with different friends, different. I've got a few different girlfriends where I'll stay at their place, and so we've had the evening. I stay, maybe I'll stay 2 or 3 days, and we really have that full amount of time. And then, of course, as you said, there's all the social media to keep up with or video call. My friend messaged me the other day. She's like, call me when you're up because of time zone. And so when we're video calling and things, it doesn't seem that far away. Even one time I remember when I was living in Costa Rica, I can't remember, a friend of mine said, she's like, we need to drink. I thought, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so I said, okay. And I bought a bottle of wine, and she had, I think, a bottle of wine. She was in Canada, I was in Costa Rica, and we video called and had some wine. And it was like we were together, but not quite. It's not exactly the
right.
same, but it still feels the same. So I don't feel like I'm gone for a full year before I see them again.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of have your little girls' night out on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, it's great. Or sometimes I think one time though I was further away. So she was having a drink. She's like, what are you drinking? And I'm having coffee. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning here. So you have
You
your
know,
drink. I'll have coffee.
I put a little Bailey's in the coffee, but
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
honestly, the time differential here in Southeast Asia, I'm exactly 12 hours off of Central Time in the US where my family's at.
It's not bad.
I think that the difference in time zones has messed up my communication with family and friends much more than any distance has,
Mm.
if that makes any sense. Because
Yeah.
now I've got to be very cognizant of, okay, I don't want to call, okay, let me see, it's 9 o'clock here. Okay, 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay, good. Yeah, I can kind of figure it
Hmm.
out. Before you just didn't really, living in Mexico, I spent time in Belize, Colombia, different, but it's all in the same sort of time zone.
Yeah, it's within an hour or so kind of thing. Hmm.
Yeah, so you
Sometimes the
didn't really
same
put much
time.
thought into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes
Right.
the same time, but
Yeah.
it's
I
given me an
actually,
extra
but
layer.
being in Europe right now, I love the difference for my daily routine because my clients are generally in North America. So I get up in the morning and I have a great routine. I meditate, I exercise, eat, read a little bit. Like I do what I want to do, then get into doing a bit of work. I probably start work around noon. And I don't really start having meetings with anybody till probably close to 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me. And I'll go to about 7, maybe 8 sometimes for meetings, and then wrap up what I need to finish up. And for me, I love starting the day that way. And when I was back in North America, um, it was just so different of getting up and it's like, oh, I got a meeting in an hour. Oh, and I don't like it, to be perfectly honest. Like, I like having kind of a slower paced morning, doing some stuff, getting things done, and then getting into work kind of at that noon time and working longer. For me, it's been a bit of an adjustment, but I absolutely love it now. And when I went back and everything was kind of on the same time, I just thought, oh, I'm not
Oh,
liking this get up and be up for an hour, and I'm up fairly early. I'm generally up around 6 a.m. So yeah, I just know I like having a nice morning routine, which I'm still busy. I'm doing stuff. It's not like I'm sleeping until 10 or anything like that. I'm still getting up at about 6 and starting my day, but I get so much things that I need to do or want to do before I really get into all of those work things that then drag out into sometimes late in the evening.
yeah, yeah. It's takes some getting used to, but
Hmm.
there's pros and cons to it, honestly. Because
Hmm.
when I lived in Las Vegas or Phoenix, I was on the West Coast. So what I do with clients all over the US, I was very regimented, very disciplined, up at 4:30 in the gym. That way I could take time, eat right, do everything before everything kicked in at whatever, 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was, because 8 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast is still 11 o'clock in the morning on East Coast. So
Mhm.
I would get at it. I would get at it early. Everything was super structured and it was good. And I'm not a morning person. I do not like getting up in the morning, but I thrive on making myself, having that discipline and that structure.
Mhm.
It works for me. Here, I'm all over the board because sometimes I'll get off doing like podcasts at 3 o'clock in the morning, my time.
Oh, yeah.
That's like when you sent me your calendar, and I was like 6 o'clock in the evening for me. Oh, this is beautiful. This is nice. So it was, but yeah, it's because you could sleep. I end up sleeping in, which is fine. And then I have this big chunk in the day where there's absolutely nothing going on because it's middle of the night in the US. So I either have to do stuff early
Right.
in the morning or late at night. Or separate,
Mhm.
sometimes both. Like I had stuff to do this morning at 7, and then I have stuff to do this evening. So it's a little weird. I think Europe would be kind of a nice
I think
sweet
it's a nice
spot in
sweet spot.
between. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
it is, and there's many wonderful places to live in Europe. I do want to check out more of Asia. It is kind of pulling me to see more and check it out. I do love being in Europe though. The time zones and everything works well, and I just love the lifestyle and ease of travel and the cheapness of it, and it's just many things that I love about being in Europe.
Yeah, I can imagine. I haven't spent that kind of time in Europe. I've been to France, Spain, but only for a couple weeks at a time. So I don't really,
Right.
you get an idea, but you don't really get a feeling for it. All
Right.
all I know is it's going to be really tough for me on the cost of living, because when I was in, like, for this place, I'm grossly overpaying for it at about $600 a month, and I'm right in the middle of everything. When I was in Vietnam, I had a high rise condo with a view of the entire downtown. It was a corner unit, so I had a view of the downtown out of 2 windows. It was
Nice.
absolutely amazing. Guard gated, concierge, like gym, multiple pools, the whole bit. I also was grossly overpaying for that at like 650, or no, it was like 690 for a month.
And people
So,
who are listening who are in North America, they're like, "What? That's not overpaying." But I get it when
oh,
we're in a certain place compared to other things, it is overpaying. But what we get, it's still to us, it's so cheap.
yeah. Well, because I went through Airbnb, it's just easier. But if I had boots on the ground, I was going to stay there, then I would go find a local person to help me find a long-term rental. And instead of paying, almost $700 for the month, probably down in that 450 or 500 range.
Probably.
So if
Yeah.
it's not cheaper. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I do like the flexibility of Airbnb and all
Mhm.
that, but when I find a place that I like, 'cause right now I'm just kind of bouncing around trying to find where my vibe is at, and um we'll see. But when I find a place, then
Here's,
I'll do a long term. It'll be much cheaper even.
but you are aware that there is no perfect place. I don't
I'm
believe that
aware.
there is a perfect place because there's always some type of give and take. I've
Right.
traveled a lot. I've been to a lot of countries. I'm still looking for my quote perfect place, and I've come to the conclusion that it really doesn't exist. There will be close to, but there's always going to be some type of give up, and that give could even be just time zone. Right? Like maybe
Yeah.
everything else is really great, love it, but the time zone or rainy season is really long and there's like hurricanes and typhoons and things like that. Don't like earthquakes. I mean, so there's going to be something that's going to
Pros and
be a bit of
cons.
a give and take. Absolutely.
Yeah. Pros and cons to everything. Like I discovered a con last night because I absolutely adore Asian food. I love Thai food. I love Vietnamese food. I love it. But last night I had a craving for pizza,
Oh,
and I went searching around here. Like I'm in the middle of the busy area, so there's a ton of restaurants around here.
mhm.
I found a place that was pizza and it was kind of Italian, and I was like, okay, is it good? They're like, oh yeah, this is fantastic. I was like,
Of course they're gonna.
yeah, of course it is. I'm like, I'm picky. And it was serviceable at best, but
Oh, it's so
you can't have it all.
disappointing. No, see, that's one of the things. So it's like when you go back to the States or to other travels, I always have certain foods that I eat in certain countries because they taste better or it's just not as good where I'm living or traveling to. So but sometimes I am still disappointed with that. When I was in Denver, I wanted eggs Benedict. I was like, oh, I'm leaving the hotel. I'm gonna have eggs Benedict. It's gonna be so delicious.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed with it. It was
Uh,
okay. Like I've
uh,
had better eggs Benedict in Spain than I did at the hotel in Denver. I was very disappointed with it.
that's sad.
Yeah, it was. It was very sad.
Yeah, I was
But you know,
really
that's
spoiled.
yeah.
I was gonna say I was
It,
really spoiled in Vegas because there are so many different types of food. I was eating Vietnamese food at least once or twice a week. I was eating Thai food all the time. You could get Indian
mm,
food. It was amazing. You could get
mm,
obviously American, Italian, anything that you wanted, and it was
mm,
good.
yeah.
So now I'm here, and Thai food's probably a little bit better than it was there, but there's so many
Mhm.
other foods that I can't get really good ones. So
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's it's everything in life. It's
yeah,
all everything is some type of give and take, some pros and cons. We can never really truly have it all because we have to give up something to have something else. But it's just
yeah,
figuring out what we really don't need, what's really not that important, and really what are those kind of deal breakers or things that are non-negotiables for us, and then focusing on those non-negotiables, narrowing it down by that, and then those other negotiables, well, we hope for the best.
yeah. Yeah, you could always, what I'm thinking of doing is maybe having a place in a couple different places because
That's actually
then
my
you get the
ideal.
best of both worlds.
That's what I'm striving for. I'm really striving to have three places, one in three different countries. So I can travel to them and very different places. So probably definitely something in Europe, probably something somewhere in Asia. Um, I'm debating a little bit the Middle East, Dubai. I've got a friend there who absolutely loves it there. I've got to see. I've not been myself. I haven't traveled in Africa at all, and there's good places and there's not so great places right
Right.
now. And then the Americas. It's closer to Canada, so but it's I don't know, maybe Central or South America there. I haven't traveled too much in the South, but I did spend 4 years in Costa Rica, which was beautiful. But yeah, it's kind of trying to then figure it out. But definitely I think for sure Europe, probably somewhere in Asia. Um, because I love the tropics and the warm weather. Like I hate the cold. Absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
I won't go anywhere when it's cold. I
Yep.
complain when I have to go back to Canada for Christmas for a couple of weeks. And that time I'll only do 2 weeks because I'm like, no, it's
Yeah.
cold. I don't want to be here.
I do like 5 days
So
in the wintertime. I'm like, that's it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah. I
So
Thailand is one of my spots for sure. Now I've got to spend some more time in Bali because it might be Thailand, might be Bali. I don't know, one of those two.
right.
Um, on this island, Koh Samui, it's really neat. It probably looks somewhat similar to Costa Rica because you've got the water, beach, and then jungle going into like hills and mountains. So it's got
Very
that sort of
nice.
vibe to it.
Yeah.
And like I was on a beach today doing a photo shoot and trying to get some, more relaxed headshots and stuff. The photographer took me to this beach. It was kind of secluded, but all up in the mountains, there were just houses and villas so that you could just have this whole view of the bay. And I was like, I know they're
That
spendy,
looks
but maybe
nice.
just a condo up there where you got that view.
Right.
So
Right.
beautiful. It is just
Yeah.
breathtaking here.
Nice. Nice. Well, Steve, if you were to give our listeners a piece of advice about moving abroad, if they're a little unsure, a little worried about it, what kind of advice would you give them?
Face your fears, whatever those
Mm,
may be. Coming from the US, we unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the US who are kind of stuck there and they don't travel that much outside of the US. And I hear that from a lot of my friends, even like when I went to Mexico, like, oh my God, you're gonna die, you know.
I know, I know.
It's got to get out and experience it. And the biggest piece of advice I would say is don't go to a damn resort.
Mhm.
Stay out somewhere. Okay, don't be stupid. Make sure you know where you're staying, but get an
Of
Airbnb in a
course.
good spot. Get off the resort. Don't a resort. It doesn't matter if you're in Florida or Hawaii or Costa Rica or Mexico or the resorts are nice and they got a big pool and they got restaurants. You're not traveling. That's not
Right.
traveling. Get out, spend some time in where the locals are, and
Mhm.
kind of get into the culture. And there are going to be things that are going to shock you and things that are going to be like, oh my God, it's going to be really, for a lot of people, getting out of their comfort zone.
Mhm.
But I promise you it's worth it. I promise you. Even, even me, I've traveled a lot. I've lived abroad a lot. And I still see, like when I was in Vietnam, you have never seen traffic like there
Really?
is in Ho Chi Minh City. And it's scooters and it is insane. You, I was like, oh, I had never seen anything like it. It was absolute chaos. I couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on. I was white knuckling in the taxi on the way to the Airbnb. I was like, what the? And I remember it was funny because that I have a good friend of mine in Phoenix, and she has a cousin in Ho Chi Minh City. So she introduced us, and she'll show you around. I'm like, cool. I got kind of some boots in the ground.
Right.
I remember we were walking down the sidewalk, and we came to a street, and there were just scooters flying by, and I stopped, and she was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't want to die." So she's like, "No." She just grabbed my hand. She just walked. All these scooters are hauling ass, and she just walked. And that's the thing there in Vietnam is you just walk across the street, and the scooters will go around you full speed.
Wow.
Where you get in
Mhm.
trouble is if you stop or
Stop.
you hesitate or
Because
you
they're not
slow down.
expecting you to stop and they're seeing and they're timing the going as to which way they need to go.
Exactly. So you just got to go. So
You just got to
look,
go.
there's things that are going to make you uncomfortable. There's things that are going to be different from wherever you are at, but the experience is so fulfilling and so rich when you travel. Like you cannot help but come away from it a better person.
That's perfect. I completely agree. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. I'm sure our listeners got a lot of valuable information, and I really appreciate you sharing your stories with us.
I hope so. It was fun. I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.